She said she didn't want to go on vacation with me. That was the first crack in the perfect picture I'd been painting in my head for months. Me, her, a cliffside villa in Malibu, champagne at sunset, an entirely new chapter for us. I still remember the exact moment I brought it up. Monday morning, coffee steam dancing around my mug, sunlight spilling onto the kitchen counter as I slid my laptop aside and looked up at her. "Let's pull the trigger," I'd said, voice low with excitement. "Book the week after Memorial Day. We'll escape everything." Her response was immediate, a tight shake of her head, eyes avoiding mine. "I'm just not ready," she said. "Work's been crazy. I'm exhausted. Maybe later." Later never came. Over the next 2 days, our text threads lost their usual spark. I found myself staring at a dark screen, rereading "I'm too tired" a dozen times. By Wednesday, I tried again. "How about a long weekend? I've heard Laguna Beach is amazing this time of year." Again, hesitation. She blamed deadlines, burnout, stress. Every excuse sounded practiced. Guilt gnawed at me. Was I pushing too hard? Should I have waited? On Thursday, she told me she had an urgent work trip. Only a few days. "Out of town, client emergency," she wrote, sending a one-off smiley face that felt more like a mask than comfort. I wished her luck, tried not to overthink it, but every hour stretched into an eternity. I replayed her refusal in my mind, twisting it, turning it, "not ready" versus "urgent trip." It didn't add up. That night, I sat at my desk, half-finished spreadsheet glowing in the dim light. My phone buzzed, nothing new from her. I swiped open the Photos app, idly scrolling through our trip from last summer. Snapshots of us on the Santa Monica Pier, laughing under the Ferris wheel lights. Comforting memories, bittersweet reminders. Then I tapped into the cloud backup by mistake. Someone else had left it logged in. And there, buried under a work trip album, were the first clues. I tapped into that stray cloud account and froze. The first image was so bright it felt like a slap. Jessica in a teal bikini, her hair wet and slicked back, leaning against the railing of a private villa terrace. Ocean spray glittered behind her. In her hand was a wine glass, half full of something pale and bubbly. And next to her, Michael. Taller than me by a few inches, dark hair cropped short, a tattoo peeking out from under his sleeve. They were smiling, breasts pressed together as if the lens were their own shared secret. My heart sank so hard I thought I might collapse. I scrolled, hundreds of photos, each more damning than the last. A sunset dinner at a candlelit table on that exact same Malibu cliff we dreamt about. Jessica tracing his jawline as she laughed at something he whispered. A video clip of them dancing under string lights beside the pool, her head thrown back, carefree, while he held her close. I paused it at the exact moment their bodies touched in that slow sway. She looked happier than she had with me in years. I checked the timestamps. The whole thing spanned the exact 5 days she'd claimed urgent work. May 12th through the 16th. Our break on paper, her vacation in practice. She'd used my villa notes to find the property, booked it under a friend's name, and not bothered to delete a single photo. My mind raced. Was it anger? Pain? Betrayal? All of it muzzled me into silence. I stared at my phone screen for what felt like hours, retching on the inside while my hands trembled. I sent her a text. Calm, normal. "Hey Jess, hope the trip is going well? Everything okay?" Minutes passed before her reply. "All good, just wrapping up a few meetings. Missing you? Missing me." The lie tasted like ash. I shut my laptop, plunged the room into darkness, and lay there, unable to breathe. At 6 a.m., I dragged myself to her side of the bed. The sheets were cold. She wasn't home. The front door was locked. No note, no call. I realized then that I had two choices: confront her with the evidence or keep digging. My phone buzzed again. It was her. 2 simple words. "Call me when you wake up." I stared at it, thumb hovering over the screen. My chest tightened. I pressed ignore and opened her next album. I tapped through every folder until I found folders labeled flights, receipts, and itinerary. PDF boarding passes dated May 12th, LAX to Orange County, booked not in her name but under some David Reynolds. A PayPal transaction from April 30th, Ocean View Villa, Malibu Retreats, $3,200. And underneath, a slew of Uber charges. LAX Villa, Villa, Rooftop Bar, Villa, S&A Airport. Each timestamp matched the photos almost down to the second. My head pounded. I felt like I was drowning in proof. I took a screenshot of her text. "Missing you?" And then another of Michael's grin as he held her close over that candlelit table. I sent them all to myself in a draft email, just to have them somewhere that couldn't vanish if she deleted the cloud. The sensation was surreal. Part of me wanted to laugh at the absurdity. Part of me wanted to puke. I closed my eyes and pictured her face. The way her eyes crinkled when she laughed, the way her hair fell over her shoulder at the pool. All of it stolen, repurposed for someone else's camera. I thought of our last fight 2 weeks ago. She'd snapped at me for leaving socks on the floor. I told her she was being dramatic. If only I'd known the real reason she was snapping. By the time she called, my phone buzzing, "Jess is calling," I was shaking. I stared at her name, my thumb hovering over answer and decline. My gut told me to let it ring out, but my heart burned to hear her voice, to ask why, to let her feel even an ounce of this ache. I picked up. "Hey," her voice soft, familiar. I said nothing at first. My own breathing was loud in my ear. "Babe, you okay?" "Explain," I whispered, and the word tore out of me like a knife. There was a pause, then her breath. What are you talking about?" "Don't play dumb. I saw the photos, Jess. I saw everything." My voice cracked midway, but I pressed on. "You went to Malibu, with him, on the trip we planned." She stammered, and for a moment I thought she might confess, apologize, crumble into regret. Instead, she swallowed hard, voice steadier. Michael and I, it just happened. I'm sorry." The betrayal hit me like a freight train. My vision blurred. "Sorry? That's it?" She tried to elaborate, but I couldn't listen. "I'm coming home," I cut her off. "We need to talk face to face." I ended the call, my blood boiling. I grabbed my keys, my phone, and headed out into the early morning air. The sky was pale pink, the world waking up around me, but it all felt surreal, like I was moving through someone else's life. I drove to her office, rehearsing everything I was going to say, every question I needed answers to, every accusation I'd hurl. I needed to see her. To hold those receipts up like evidence in court. By the time I reached her building, my chest was tight, my hands numb around the steering wheel. I parked, took a deep breath and walked inside, each step echoing down the marble hall. I could feel my heart pounding louder than the elevator doors sliding shut behind me. I pressed 14, her floor, the one where she'd lied to me all those months. When the doors opened, I saw her desk, empty, and for a fleeting moment I wondered if she'd run, if she'd already left. A woman at reception looked up. "Mr. Carter? She's expecting you." "Thank you," I said, voice flat, and then I stepped around the corner. There she was. Without a word, I held up my phone. The photos glowed in the dim office light. She met my gaze, and for the first time I saw something I didn't expect: regret. But was it enough? I tightened my grip on the phone and waited for her to speak. I stepped into her office, phone trembling in my hand, photos glaring at me like evidence in a trial. Jessica sat behind her glass desk, computer screen minimized, cheeks pale under the overhead lights. Her designer blouse looked pristine, no smudge of guilt, no tear-stained collar. "Ryan," she said quietly, voice steady but too controlled. "You shouldn't have come here." I didn't answer. I held up the phone, showing her the thumbnail of that cliffside dinner shot. Her and Michael, lit by candlelight, his hand curled possessively at the small of her back. "How long?" I demanded. "How long have you been doing this to me?" She blinked, swallowed. "It wasn't like that. It started as flirting. And then it just..." "Flirting," I repeated, voice low. "You flirted for months? You lied every day for months?" My pulse pounded so loud I was sure everyone in the hall. I gripped the edge of her desk, leaning forward until my eyes locked on hers. "Tell me one thing. Did you ever want us to go on that trip? Or was that just another lie?" Her face crumpled. She squeezed her eyes shut, then opened them, gaze flicking to the side as if searching for a way out. I did want it. I still do. But work got too insane and Michael was there for me. He was supportive, bought me coffee, listened to me. I felt like I was drowning and he was my lifeline." She paused, tears threatening. "It wasn't planned, I swear." His name on her lips felt like acid. "You drowned me," I hissed. "You used our plans, our dreams, to hide in his arms. You didn't even clean your cloud photos. You didn't even try." Jessica's shoulders shook. "I'm sorry, Ryan." She reached out, but I recoiled as if burned. A coworker passed my office, paused. We both turned. She a deer caught in headlights, me an accused criminal. I realized then how public this was becoming, my betrayal broadcast on an office floor, gossip bait for her colleagues. I straightened, voice cold. "I'm done," I said, dropping my phone back into my pocket. "Don't call me." I walked away, each stride hollow. Outside, the sun felt harsh on my skin. No gentle Malibu breeze to soften the blow. My car keys lay like ballast in my coat pocket. I fumbled for them, heart still hammering. I didn't know where I was going. Maybe a back home to pack. All I knew was that nothing would ever be simple again. I pressed the button on my remote, headlights blinking, and drove into the blur of morning traffic, the ruin of what I thought was love weighing heavy in my chest. I didn't know where I was headed, but the steering wheel felt like the only solid thing in my hands. The city blurred past as I drove, streetlights flickering off my windshield. I passed the gas station, where we used to stop for late-night snacks, the taco truck where Jessica and I shared our very first "I love you." Each landmark stabbed at me, a reminder of better days. When the weight in my chest became unbearable, I pulled into a dimly lit parking lot behind a small white clapboard church. The neon free coffee sign in the window looked like an afterthought, but I needed something, anything, to steady me. I killed the engine, left the headlights on, and sat there in silence for what felt like forever. My breaths came shallow, almost apologetic. I forced myself out of the car, limbs too heavy to move, and walked to the front door. Inside, the sanctuary was empty, but for a single wooden pew at the far end. The stained glass windows cast muted patterns onto the stone floor, a riot of color muted by the pre-dawn gloom. I sank onto the bench, shoulders slumping, and rested my forehead against my forearm. "God, what do I do now?" I whispered into the stillness. No fiery thunderbolt of revelation came down from above, no booming voice, just the distant hum of the HVAC and the steady drip of a leaky faucet somewhere in the back. I closed my eyes, and for a moment that felt like both an eternity and a second, I let myself break. I thought about our wedding, how I'd watched her walk down the aisle in that simple ivory dress, tears glistening in her eyes, promising forever. I remembered the pastor's words, "What God has joined together, let no one separate." Back then, I believed them with everything I had. Now, I wasn't sure what to believe about anything. I stayed on that pew until the sun began to burn away the shadows outside. I rose slowly, as if climbing out of a grave, and headed for the office at the back, where coffee sat waiting. A cup was already poured, black, no sugar, standing beside a Bible left open to Psalm 34:18. "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted, and saves those who are crushed in spirit." My throat tightened reading it, but I clung to the promise like a life raft. I tucked that verse into my wallet and took a long, steadying sip. The bitterness seared my senses awake. I knew I couldn't stay here forever. This wasn't my final destination. I stepped back into the parking lot, phone in hand. Before dialing Jessica, I paused. Instead, I called Mark, my oldest friend. His sleepy voice on the other end was a balm. I told him everything. The cloud, the photos, her lies. He didn't say much at first, just listened. Then he offered to come get me, to talk it through over breakfast. I accepted before he could change his mind. I got back in the car, the engine now feeling like a heartbeat. As I drove toward the diner where Mark would be waiting, I realized that betrayal had shattered the life I thought I knew, but it hadn't killed me. There was pain, yes, but also a flicker of something else, resolve. I would figure out what that meant. Step by step, prayer by prayer, conversation by conversation. And as the church windows disappeared in my rearview mirror, I understood that forgiveness, of her, yes, but also of myself, might be the hardest journey of all. But I'd start walking. I pulled into the diner's gravel lot just as the neon open sign flickered on, the sky streaked with dawn's pale gold. Mark was already inside, sliding into a booth with 2 steaming mugs of coffee between us. He gave me a nod. No questions, no judgment. I sank onto the bench across from him, leather jacket still damp with morning chill, and reached for my cup. The warmth seeped into my fingers, a small comfort after the icy dread of the last 24 hours. "What a mess, man," Mark said softly, stirring cream into his coffee. His eyes were tired but steady, exactly what I needed. I took a sip, the bitterness more welcome than I'd expected. "She's your wife," he continued. "You deserve better than lies." I nodded, throat tight. I'd rehearsed a confrontation, but this Sitting here, safe in the booth's quiet glow, felt more real than any argument behind glass office walls. I told him everything. The texts, the boarding passes under David Reynolds, the way her smile in those photos looked like possession. Mark didn't bat an eye, he just listened. When I finished, he leaned back and shook his head. "You need time to think," he said, voice gentle. "Figure out what you want. Confrontation isn't everything." I realized he was right. I'd been so consumed by my anger, my need for answers, that I hadn't considered what I actually wanted next. Divorce? Forgiveness? A chance to rebuild, or at least to walk away with my dignity intact? The questions swirled. We ate pancakes I barely tasted, talking instead about simpler things. Our old college road trip, the time we got stuck in the desert with a blown tire, the laugh we shared when a rattlesnake slid past our campfire. Each memory was a lifeline, reminding me that life could still hold joy, friendship, and laughter, even after heartbreak. By the time I left the diner, the sun was fully up and the morning rush had begun. Traffic crawled, commuters glued to their phones. I sat at the wheel, hand hovering over my own phone, debating whether to text Jessica. A message drafted itself, something like, "We need to talk." But the screen went dark as I remembered her face when I showed her those photos, the cold detachment in her eyes. Instead, I drove to the beach. Malibu Boulevard wound away from the city, the roar of the ocean growing louder with each mile. I found a turnout overlooking the cliffs we'd once dreamed about. The waves crashed against the rocks below, white foam puffing out in rhythmic bursts. I stepped out, the wind whipping at my hair, salt spray on my skin. I stood there for a long time, hands in my pockets, watching the horizon stretch endless and unbroken. The same place I'd envisioned with Jessica now felt like neutral ground, a canvas waiting for new plans, new dreams, whether with her or without. I pulled the psalm verse from my wallet. "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." I whispered it into the wind, feeling the words settle in my chest. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring. Divorce papers, counseling sessions, a renewed proposal to rebuild trust, or simply the decision to walk away forever. But in that moment, I knew one thing. I would move forward on my own terms, guided by faith, friendship, and the unwavering truth that I deserved honesty and love. And as the sun climbed higher, casting golden light over the ocean, I took a deep breath and let the tide carry away the last wisps of doubt. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in days, I felt steady. The sea air carried a promise of change as I stood on that sunlit bluff, watching waves recede and return in tireless rhythm. I pulled my phone from my pocket and stared at Jessica's number. Part of me wanted to type one last plea for answers, another for forgiveness, another for the chance to salvage what we'd lost. But my thumb hovered over messages, then dropped. Instead, I opened notes and wrote a few lines. "Jessica, I found everything. I won't pretend this doesn't hurt, but I also won't beg for what you've already given away. I'm choosing to believe that real love is honest, even when it's hard. I hope you find the courage to tell the truth to the next person who needs it. As for me, I'm turning this page. Goodbye." I read it twice, each word echoing like a confession. Then I deleted goodbye, left the rest, hit send, and put the phone away. The message vanished into her inbox, waiting. I didn't need to see her reply. The act of sending it, of releasing the weight of accusation and expectation, felt like baptism. I walked down the narrow path toward the parking lot, each step lighter. Mark's truck was still there. I'd left it parked nearby. He climbed out with that half smile of his, knowing I needed no questions now. We loaded into the cab wordlessly, the engine rumbling to life beneath the dawn sky. I kept my gaze on the horizon where silver water met gold light. "Where to?" Mark asked. "Home," I said, "and then wherever comes next." He clapped a hand on my shoulder. "Sounds good, brother." On the drive back, I thought about forgiveness. Not as a favor to her, but as a promise to myself, to forgive my own naivete, to forgive my own mistakes in love, and to trust that honesty would guide me into something better. The road stretched ahead, winding through coastal hills and sleepy towns, each mile an invitation to rebuild. I didn't know what awaited. New connections, new dreams, or simply the quiet peace of a heart that's been broken and gently mended. But I knew I would meet it with open eyes. And as the sun rose fully, flooding the windshield with warmth, I realized that though the trip I'd dreamed of with her had fallen apart, a new journey was just beginning. One of truth, faith, and the fragile, beautiful hope of starting over.